So Sony has released the most boring lens of all time. It's a Sony 24 to 50 millimeter lens. Now we have already so many options when it comes to that lens range. We have the original Sony 24 to 50 millimeter. Then we have the Mark II that came out. That's very expensive. And then we have the Sigma version. We have the Rokinon version. And then we also have the Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter lens that I've been using for the past 4 years for both professional and casual use. But Sony was like, oh, you know what? Let's make another one. Let's make it 24 to 50 millimeter, which is like a 24 to 70, but it's a 50 millimeter instead. So Sony has released the 24 to 50 millimeter f2.8 lens. Now this is a lens that never existed before because no one thought it was useful. No one needs this lens. No one should buy this lens. Honestly, it's just a ridiculous lens. So let's talk about it. First of all, it's $1,000. So it's not even like if this was like a budget like $400-500 lens that's like there as your starting lens, maybe it's like a new kit lens or whatever, then I would be fine with it. Then it would be actually a pretty good lens. But it's $1,000 lens, and for $1,000, you know what you can get? You can get yourself a professional grade Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter f2.8 lens, so you have a bigger range on this lens, or you can go with the Sigma version. Those ones are very affordable, professional grade lenses that are going to give you amazing results that you can use in both professional, and these lenses are pretty light too, like especially the Tamron one. It's a very light lens. I believe it's 550 grams, while the Sony 24 to 50 millimeter f2 point is a 440 grams. So they're very close in weight also. And if you're like, yak, I just want to get a casual lens that I can just walk around and, take pictures at the park of other people's kids or whatever, then you can get yourself something like this lens right here, which is the Rokinon 24mm f1.8. This lens is only 220 grams. It's $400. It's a super cheap lens and it's very sharp, high quality. I love this. Is like one of my favorite lenses of all time, honestly. It's the lens I've been using the most in the past year. And with this lens, you know what you can do? With any of these pretty much Sony cameras, it has an APC crop mode. So while you're shooting video or photo, you can just zoom in, boom, now we're at around 36 millimeters. And if you want to zoom in even more, you can just edit and crop in post and you can get to 50 millimeter. And since you have a f1.8, you're going to have a wider aperture, so you're going to be able to get better pictures in low lights. And also it's going to give you more background blur when you're shooting at 24 millimeters. And if you're like, I need to have a zoom lens, then go with the Tamron 20 to 40 millimeter lens. That's going to give you a wider coverage at 20 millimeter, and then 40 millimeters is close enough to 50. Again, you can use the APC crop mode to zoom in a little bit further if you want, and it's cheaper than the Sony's option, so I would go with that if you really want a zoom lens. And I just don't understand why Sony made this lens, and I'm being overly critical because it just feels like for the past year there hasn't been anything interesting when it came to the photography space, while at the same time AI is growing and it's kind of destroying the photography space. And then Sony releases this, lens that no one would want, and it's like, what are you doing? Now, for you guys, I want to make more photography, camera, lens videos because this stuff I'm passionate about, I love. But lately, like, there hasn't been anything interesting. I feel like these camera companies just ran out of ideas. Like, how many more, like, just boring lenses and cameras are they going to come out with? Like, especially when it comes to Sony, I feel like they're just trying to release, new camera and new gear like every year, but they don't need to. And even when they do, like, they release the Sony a7 III, and it's a worse camera than a7 IV. Like, when it comes to image quality, low light performance, a7 IV beats it. Now the A9 has different specialties, like it obviously has a global shutter, which is pretty cool, but again, worse image quality compared to a CMOS sensor like this. And also, it just has a bunch of stuff that most people are not going to use. Like, if I'm shooting wildlife with the Sony a7 III, this camera can shoot 10 frames per second. And a lot of times I bring it lower. I shoot at the medium setting, like shooting at 5-6 frames per second. For those type of stuff, that gets it done. You don't need 120 frames per second. That's a nightmare, especially if you're shooting in RAW. That's so much data that you're storing on your computer, transferring. It's just insane. And then people be like, well, if you're shooting at the Olympics and you want to get that perfect shot, it's like, how many people are at the Olympics shooting? Like 100 people? because of 100 people, let's move, all the camera gear, all the, camera lenses towards that, which is ridiculous because there's so many people that work in professional photography that could benefit from different types of cameras and lenses. People who shoot weddings, for example, that's a giant industry. People who shoot, events, or if they're shooting, headshots, or if they're shooting fashion, those people can benefit a lot of the technologies. And honestly, for like shooting fashion, global shutter is a great thing because you don't have to, you can sync the camera with any flash at any speed. That's pretty crazy. So global shutter is a great option for that. Honestly, it feels like a lot of camera companies are just running out of ideas, which is pretty sad. And like I'm watching like reviews on the lens, and everyone's like, well, it's not a bad lens, but it's not that necessary. They're pretty much saying that because they would just want to get more cameras and lenses from the sponsorships or from camera companies, so they can't say that the lens is completely useless and there's no reason for it to exist. But that's what people are alluding to, and I don't care because Sony's never gonna sponsor me, so I'm gonna talk shit all I want. And honestly, it kind of feels like when it comes to camera gear and lenses, we kind of got to the end game where with the A7 IV, since I got this camera, I'm just like this camera does everything I want it to do. Like I don't need anything more. Like a global shutter would be cool when shooting outside with a flash, but at the same time, I can just put an ND filter on. And how often do I shoot outside with a flash? If I did it every day, then maybe that'll be something useful. But honestly, you can just put a cheap ND filter on and then it does the job pretty well anyways. And when it comes to the camera stuff, like for example, when it comes to video, I like shooting in 1080p. I think the higher resolutions actually make your video look cheaper and worse in my opinion. Like recently I saw Lisa Frankenstein in theaters and that movie was great, like all the lighting, the cinematography was great in the movie, but it was just like I don't know, maybe it just bothers me, but I just was looking at it, I'm just like, it's way too high resolution. Like, I can tell they shot the movie in probably like 6K or 8K, maybe 4K, but it just like makes the video look so much cheaper. I think 1080p does have a better look because it is a little bit blurrier and it kind of creates like this like a magic to it. When it comes to these higher resolutions, they just show too much and like all the magic of filmmaking kind of gets blown away with it, especially if you're using practical effects in a movie. Like when you have these higher resolution cameras, they just don't look good. I think like a movie like that, if they shot it the same exact way, but instead they just use like a Arri Alexa Classic that shoots in 1080p, I think it would have looked better. But these higher resolution stuff, and that's what these camera companies are doing. They're constantly going higher and higher, higher frame rates that we don't need, higher resolutions that we don't need, and it's just making stuff look actually worse. But they keep doing it because they don't know what else to do, especially when they're competing with stuff like, camera phones, which is what everyone's using nowadays to take pictures and videos. They're like, well, if we have to sell a camera, we have to be better than this. So what are they doing? They're just putting higher resolutions, higher frame rates, even though people don't need it. That's why lately, for the past year, I've been focusing more on AI stuff because just the technology stuff in AI, the advancements that we're getting is a lot more interesting than what's happening with photography and videography. I feel like when it comes to photography and videography or camera gear or lenses, we kind of peaked at it. And I don't know if there's anything really interesting that's going to come out that's going to change the game. I think a lot of stuff is just going to go to AI, and a lot of these photography and camera gear stuff is just going to it's gonna be similar to like what happened with film, where like people still shoot film for the novelty of it, but I think when it comes to a lot of these like camera gear and lenses, it's just gonna be a novelty thing where like you're not gonna need it. You're gonna be able to take a picture with your phone and you can have it look like a 35 millimeter 1.4 lens, or you can have it look like a 24 to 70 millimeter. None of that stuff is gonna matter because your phone's gonna be able to make it look exactly like what you want it to look with the use of AI. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more photography, camera lens video, and also I'm doing some AI videos also now. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.